Blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hi, this is Bruce, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from current issues of the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Front page story from February 14th and 15th, 2026. Picture of a elderly couple sitting with his arm around her. It says Laura, 88, and Dan Mellon, 90. They've been married for 66 years, and the two first met while in Sunday school through Dan's sister. The title is Lasting Love. Brookdale Niagara couples reflect on their long-lasting marriages. Article by Robert Creenan. In a place where many residents celebrate Valentine's Day with the precious memories rather than a hand to hold, love still lingers at Brookdale Niagara in Wheatfield. At the facility live couples whose marriages have stretched across wars, raising children, road trips, and nearly a century of change. Bill and Dolores Laska and Dan and Laura Malone are unique in the complex, as it does not get many couples who are married practically all their adult lives. The Laskas, 95 and 93 respectively, have been married for 74 years, and the Mellons, 90 and 88, for 66 years. We've been together forever, Dolores said, with her and her husband living at Brookdale, Niagara, for nearly 2 years. The Mellons have lived there for the past 9 months. Both from Niagara Falls, Bill and Dolores have known each other since he was 10, going to the same grade schools. His father owned a bar on 24th Street, and she lived in the apartment building next door. They were friends for so long that their romantic feelings just came naturally. However, there were some ethnic tensions preventing them from marrying smoothly. Bill came from an Italian family, while Dolores's family was Polish, and her father did not want her to marry an Italian. He even sent her to Du Bois, Pennsylvania for a brief time to try and break them up. He even tried to get her married to someone else. The guy he wanted me to marry, I didn't like, Dolores said. It seems like this worked out. Bill had worked plenty of other places around Niagara Falls, whether it be cutting lawns, setting up pins in a bowling alley, at a Greek restaurant in Buffalo, in the Air National Guard, at the airbase, or at Ferguson Electric. Dolores, meanwhile, did not have the same breadth of jobs as her husband, having only one at the former AM&A's location inside the Summit Park Mall. Together they raised 3 children, 2 of whom moved to Florida and Alabama. Bill's trick to being married for so long? Simply saying, "Yes, dear." Originally from Buffalo and having lived around Erie County, Dan and Laura first met while in Sunday school, with Laura being a friend of Dan's sister. She had suffered from polio and required crutches to walk, needing her older brother for help. He took such good care of her, Laura said of Dan, helping her with basic things like going up and down the stairs. That was what helped Laura realize Dan was a keeper. I ignored her, Dan said, at first, but Laura kept showing up until he finally did notice her. They did not have their first date until Bill was a college sophomore at a University of Buffalo basketball game against Colgate University, which Bill remembers for people throwing Colgate toothpaste containers onto the court. Dan had worked in the former Pratt & Lambert Paint Company, based in the Black Rock neighborhood of Buffalo, and the Carborundum Company, before going on to become a Buffalo State chemistry teacher for 35 years. Laura went into nursing, working at the former Deaconess Center in Buffalo and Kenmore Mercy Hospital. They ended up raising 5 kids who all stayed in Western New York, the furthest one being in Batavia. When they retired, the Mellons bought a mobile home and traveled across the country for 25 years, finding places that appealed to both of them while staying somewhere they knew would be clean. While driving through Montana, they decided to go to a dinosaur exhibit that their AAA book had recommended. Laura did not want to go inside since she was busy making a quilt, only for Dan to find all the dinosaurs covered in quilts. They also found a quilting show while going through Kentucky, but they had to park on someone's lawn since all the nearby campgrounds were full. It's very easy being married to him, Laura said. We had plenty of common interests, Dan said, but if we didn't, we would go with each other anyway, just as long as we're together. Aerospace Museum bids for a return downtown. Currently housed at airport, officials hope to land at hydraulic canal parcel. Article by Robert Creenan. Last November, USA Niagara started the process for finding a tenant for a 3.1-acre site located on the hydraulic canal site between 1st, 2nd, Niagara, and Main Streets. One of the site's bidders was the Niagara Aerospace Museum, which is looking to return downtown for the first time since being forced out in 2008. If selected, it would construct a new museum meant to have a broader appeal and be a greater community resource both inside and outside Niagara County. We've got this great vision for the Aerospace Museum, said Executive Director Lindsay Lorne Visser. It would benefit from all the tourism and would ensure the museum's long-term stability. Visser said they worked with Hadley Exhibits to come up with the potential displays, something she described as more immersive, entertaining, educational, and STEM-focused to help encourage a career in aerospace. The museum was first located inside the former Carborundum Center building on 4th Street, now the Seneca Gaming Office building, before closing due to the property's change in ownership. It moved into the former Niagara Falls International Airport terminal in 2013. Located a 15-minute drive away from downtown and dating back to the 1950s. Plenty of the aircraft on display come from the Bell and Curtiss-Wright Aerospace companies based in western New York, along with artifacts associated with Charles Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart, and the NASA Apollo missions to the moon. Visser said their main concerns about the former terminal are its age and the fact that it was never intended to house a museum. There are infrastructure concerns that do not make sense for the museum to fix, with the displays cramped and not given the space they need. State Assemblyman Angelo Marinello has voiced his support for the museum's move to downtown Niagara Falls. Marinello says it can help anchor further development and draw visitors from the state park. Presenting the area's aerospace history in a more accessible location would also honor those involved and teach future generations about the region's role in the field, he said. Niagara Falls already has natural wonders, Marinello wrote. What it needs is a deeper story, one that connects the roar of the water to the roar of jet engines and rocket launches. The Niagara Aerospace Museum tells that story, honoring the community of workers and engineers who built machines that broke barriers, protected the nation, and carried humanity beyond the earth. It is both our local and national legacy. While RFP proposals were due this past December and no further announcements have been made, Marinello has a sense that there is state-level interest in this. His talks with members of the New York Legislative Aviation Caucus, of which he is a member, confirmed its interest in seeing the museum move back to downtown. If they get the parcel, I feel strongly that USA Niagara will promote and push it, Marinello said, noting it would help another USA Niagara project, turning the former DeFranco Park into a multi-use space. Vissel said they would want to get out there as soon as possible, dependent on when USA Niagara makes any announcements about the land. This is the story of Western New York and Niagara Falls specifically, where aviation innovations happened. Vissel said, "We owe it to tell the story in a worthy way." Aside from the Aerospace Museum, the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area also expressed interest in this land. Tour bus driver arrested. Group heading home from Niagara Falls crashed on I-90 near Pembroke. Article by the staff reporters. The driver of a tour bus that crashed on the I-90 after leaving Niagara Falls in August, killing 5 people, has been arrested, according to New York State Police. Ben Shao, 56 of Queens, was charged Wednesday with 5 counts each of second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide, state police officials announced at a news conference in Batavia on Friday. Genesee County District Attorney Kevin T. Fennell told reporters that Shao did not show any signs of drug or alcohol impairment. He declined to go into detail on the specific actions by Shao that led to his charges. After the crash, State Police Major Andre J. Ray had said the driver was distracted, but he did not say how. At a press conference in August, State Police said a preliminary investigation ruled out mechanical failure or driver impairment, but did say Shao apparently became distracted, lost control, and overcorrected before the bus went into the right shoulder and flipped over on the eastbound side of the I-90, about 25 miles east of Buffalo. At that time, Ray also didn't see how the driver became distracted. An absolute tragedy took place, Ray said, and first and foremost, our thoughts, prayers, and hearts go out to those involved, their friends, and their families. At about 12:20 p.m. on August 22nd, Shao lost control of the 2005 Van Hool bus and coach tour bus while traveling east on the I-90 in Pembroke. The bus went into the median, the driver overcorrected, and the bus ended up on its side in a ditch on the south side of the highway, troopers said. 5 passengers died at the scene, while 49 other passengers were injured and brought to 6 different Rochester and Buffalo area hospitals. Nearly everyone on the bus suffered some injury, from bruises and cuts to more serious injuries. More than 300 firefighters, police, ambulance crews, and others responded to the scene. Those who died in the crash were Sankar Kumar Jha, 65, of Madhubani, India; Pinka Chanagrani, 60, of East Brunswick, New Jersey; Zhi Hongzhou, 22, of Beijing, China, and a Columbia University student; Zhang Shunao, 55, of Jersey City, New Jersey; Jin Mingling, 56, of Jersey City, New York. The bus, owned by M&Y Tour, Inc. of Staten Island. M&Y Tour has a satisfactory safety rating and no record of accidents or fatalities over the past 2 years, according to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Officials inspected the company's buses and drivers 60 times over the past 2 years, the agency said. Shao was arraigned on Friday on a sealed indictment. He is being held in the Genesee County Jail on $100,000 bail, $200,000 bond, and $400,000 partially secured bond. He has pleaded not guilty. Second-degree manslaughter is a Class C felony that, upon conviction, can result in 5 to 15 years in state prison, while criminally negligent homicide is a Class E felony that can lead to between 16 months and 4 years in state prison. Shao's case has been adjourned to March 9th for a discovery conference in the Genesee County Court. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Upstate Exotics going strong after 2 years in business. Owner Jalen Smith's mother, Tiffany Granis, provides update on state cannabis industry. Article by Robert Creenan. When Tiffany Granis was a student at Niagara County Community College, she took a class about drug abuse prevention instead of a physical education course. An essay she wrote required teaching herself about the addiction process and how marijuana is technically not an addictive drug. It got her an A. The history of marijuana is something I wish everybody would look into, Grana said, because there's a lot of stigma with people that are totally against it. Then there's people that always liked it their whole lives. That information has certainly helped in her role as the general manager of Upstate Exotics, Niagara County's first recreational cannabis dispensary that opened in June of 2024. The mother of owner Jalen Smith offered her help as he started to put his new venture together, being in charge of the financial and HR aspects. Having had Smith while still in high school, she raised him to be a strong businessman, with Smith starting his own medical transportation business in 2019 before applying for a state cannabis license in 2022. He was a teenager when he started using cannabis, even getting a drug conviction when selling and using it while it was still illegal in New York. He was kind of skeptical at first, like, what if we don't work out, Granis said. We kind of were like, just put the money where it goes and let's try it out. She recalled that when the store first opened, they only had 5 vendors supplying products on a few shelves. Now they have 40 vendors supplying flowers, edibles, CBD concentrates, pre-rolls, and other accessories in several display cases. Most of the customers they get are on the older side, looking for less potent CBD items, helping them with anxiety, inflammation, pain, or just to go get to sleep. I was calculating in my head if we make at least this much every day, we can be afloat when we were deciding whether to open or not, Granis said. It's triple what I was expecting, so we're doing pretty good. Being the first in business means more competition later, with other retailers like Happy Times Cannabis and Carry On Cannabis setting up shop just down Niagara Falls Boulevard. Other dispensaries have opened in North Tonawanda and Lockport, creating more options closer to home for those residents. Despite the increasing number of other stores and the fact that she's trying to build a base of repeat customers, Granis is glad the industry is growing here, bringing in plenty of revenue for the cities and state. The state's comptroller's website states that $87.1 million in adult use cannabis tax revenue has been collected from April of 23 to January of 2026, with $4.58 million of that coming from Western New York. The business even allows them to give back to the Niagara Falls community through school supply giveaways, sponsoring youth baseball teams, and giving customers food during the holiday season. With ever-constant changes in cannabis regulations happening on the state level, Granis said they need to stay up on what laws change so they can make sure they are in compliance. She knows it's about getting safe products to customers rather than buying from someone they do not know who could have added something extra. On the federal level, cannabis is in the process of being reclassified from a Schedule I controlled substance to a Schedule III controlled substance, which are regarded as having acceptable medical uses with a moderate dependence risk. This past December, the Trump administration issued an executive order directing the Attorney General to take the necessary steps to complete the rulemaking process related to rescheduling marijuana. Granis said her son always talks about expanding, turning the dispensary into a possible franchise. With the Happy Times Cannabis and Carry On Cannabis near them being franchise locations, Smith and Granis doing something like that would be different because they are like a mom-and-pop store. We put in straight blood, sweat, and tears since day one, Granis said. Just to see the growth is amazing. Council seeks to restore night gyms program. Funding could come from city's gun violence elimination grant. Article by Rick Pfeiffer. The Niagara Falls City Council is looking to enter into negotiations with the Falls School District to restart a night gyms pilot program. Council members unanimously adopted a resolution Wednesday night that calls for a joint planning meeting with the superintendent, appropriate school district leadership, and the Board of Education to discuss reopening Nights gyms through a pilot program. The resolution also asks city administrators and the Corporation Council to convene a stakeholder planning meeting with school district leadership and key partners, including the Niagara Falls Police Department, to explore operational needs and potential funding, support mechanisms including the potential use of NFPD gun-involved violence elimination, GIVE, grant resources. It asks the city administrators and Corporation Council to report back on the planning within 60 days. A copy of the resolution will be sent to members of the Falls School Board, School Superintendent Mark Laurie, Mayor Robert Restaino, City Administrator Anthony Restaino, Acting Corporation Counsel Thomas DuBois, Falls Police Superintendent Nicholas Ligamari, and Falls GIVE Coordinator John Faso. The resolution originally called for the pilot program to be established at 3 North End school sites. It initially proposed programs at Henry J. Kalfas Elementary School, Abate Elementary School, and Maple Avenue Elementary School. During a council committee of the whole meeting, member James Perry, Democrat, objected to the lack of a LaSalle neighborhood school in the proposed pilot program. Members then changed the resolution's language to leave a decision on pilot program site selection to the Falls School District. I think it's a good amendment, Councilmember Bridget Miles, a Democrat. The resolution's primary sponsor said, "You leave it up to the school district to determine what schools are best for the program." Some council members also suggested that members of the newly created City Council Youth Advisory Board could weigh in on pilot program site selection. Supporters said the pilot program would allow the city and the school district to test operations, evaluate demands, and measure outcomes. Members also said the pilot may meet requirements of the NFPD's GIVE grant that call for community engagement and youth-focused public safety programs. GIVE grant funding would help offset the pilot program costs. The Niagara Gazette comments about our times. Volume 134, number 278. Niagara Gazette editorials reflect the opinion of the editorial board. Members include Cheryl Phillips, publisher, Matt Winterhalter, managing editor, and Joy Smiles, group news editor. Cheer, thumbs up. Niagara Falls High School junior Dan O'Grady is being credited with his quick thinking and helping a fellow student in crisis recently. Dan and fellow Falls junior Aiden Hewitt were at lunch when Aiden began choking on some food. Dan said his instincts took over and he rushed over and began performing the Heimlich maneuver. I was pushing hard on his stomach, and I just remember thinking, I hope I'm doing this right. He apparently was doing it right as Aiden began breathing again and was rushed to the nurse's office. As it turned out, Dan should also be credited with paying close attention to whatever medical drama he enjoys watching. He says he's never been trained on how to perform the Heimlich, but he had seen it happen on television. I just went on instinct. Pretty good instincts, we must say. A cheer, thumbs up. For those concerned about rising cases of measles in the U.S. and Canada, the news is good for Niagara County, which is currently measles-free, according to Dr. Fauzia Khan, Public Health Director. The highly contagious illegal logged more cases last year, 2,144, than in the past 3 decades, according to the Association of State and territorial health officials. Last week, the CDC confirmed 733 measles cases nationwide. There's good news on the vaccination front, too. Khan said Niagara County has a vaccination rate of 89% for the measles, mumps, and rubella immunization, while the state's rate is at 81%. Cheers, thumbs up, kudos to the fashion outlet of Niagara Falls, USA in the town of Niagara, who recently handed out $50,000 to various organizations, charitable groups and organizations as part of the annual Give Fashionably event. There were more than 30 community organizations that received a portion of the funds this year. Over the past 20 years, the town of Niagara and the fashion outlets of Niagara Falls have partnered on the program, donating more than $1 million locally. There are many vital community organizations that are in need of additional support, said Sylvia Virtuoso, Town of Niagara supervisor. Jeer, thumbs down. More bad news for the former Summit Mall property in Wheatfield, as it could be heading for foreclosure, with a lending claiming that property owners have failed to meet the conditions of its mortgage. Toronto-based Windsor Private Capital filed a complaint in the state Supreme Court in Niagara County, claiming they are owed a $1.5 million loan balance on the property. It also states its listed defendants, including property owner Zoran Kokov, did not pay the principal and interest on taxes, assessments, water rates, insurance premiums, and or escrow. It's the last downturn for the ailing structure for which various grand projects have been pitched, including a sports and entertainment site, a home for a brewing company, and Kokov's ambitious plans in 2020 for a $2.2 billion redevelopment that would have added restaurants, a 600-room hotel, an indoor water park, a 10,000-seat hockey arena for an Ontario Hockey League team, and a senior living residence. The shuttered mall is home to Niagara International Sports and Entertainment and Play University, operating inside the former Sears on the property's north end, but it's looking less and less likely we'll see a revitalization of this whole property. Brant farm owners face extensive animal cruelty charges. Couple each arraigned on more than 200 counts. Staff reporters. A town of Brant couple are facing more than 200 animal cruelty counts, each after 216 animals were removed from their property on November 19th. Bonnie L. George, 74, and Donald L. George, 77, both of Brant, were arraigned Thursday evening before Brant Town Court Justice Chad Kazmarek, and each face a charge with second-degree obstruction of governmental administration, Class A misdemeanor, and 207 counts of overdriving, torturing, and injuring animals, failure to provide proper sustenance, Class A misdemeanor, under New York State Agriculture and Markets Law. An investigation into the Georges' property began after a dog control officer received an anonymous complaint about animals living in unsafe conditions there. The complaint was forwarded to the SPCA of Erie County for further investigation. On November 19th, SPCA investigators conducted an inspection of the farm on Brant Farnham Road, where they observed neglected animals and unsanitary conditions. On November 20th, SPCA investigators executed a search warrant at the property and seized a total of 216 animals. The Georges are accused of failing to provide necessary food, water, and care to 207 of the farm and domestic animals found on their property, which included 119 goats, 47 chickens, 18 ducks and geese, 11 cats, 6 sheep, and 6 dogs. The animals were found in unsanitary conditions without proper access to food and water. Investigators also allegedly found multiple deceased animals on the property, which included goats, deer, and fowl. Branttown Court Justice Jeff Geer, who is assigned to the case, ordered the surviving animals to be forfeited to the custody of the SPCA. The obstruction charge was a result of a failure to cooperate with SPCA investigators who had observed 2 horses on the property during their inspection on November 19th, but upon the execution of the search warrant, the horses were no longer on the property, and the Georges refused to provide information on their location, preventing investigators for performing a health and welfare check on the animals. They are scheduled to return to court on March 12th for a pre-trial conference before Justice Greer. Both were released on their own recognizance, as the charges are non-qualifying of offenses for bail. Erie County District Attorney Michael J. Keene said his office has requested that the court impose a securing order that prohibits the Georges from owning, harboring, or having custody or control of any animals while the case is pending prosecution. A temporary securing order was imposed by the court. If convicted, the Georges face a maximum sentence of 364 days in jail. Keene commended SPCA Chief Officer Lindsay Wood, SPCA Senior Officer Melina Restivo, and the SPCA serving Erie County Cruelty Division for their work in the investigation. Dia Keene also commends the SPCA serving Erie County staff, ASPCA National Field Response Team, and all other who assisted in the rescue and care of the animals. The case is being prosecuted by Assistant District Attorney Megan E. Mahoney of the Animal Cruelty Unit. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Articles from Friday, February 13th of 2026. Restaino questioned on Centennial Park plan. Long Island lawmaker asks about projected revenue, additional costs. Article by Mark Shearer. A New York State Assemblyman from Long Island asked Niagara Falls Mayor Robert Restaino several pointed questions about the proposed Centennial Park project during a state budget hearing held this week in Albany. After Restaino made a formal pitch for $200 million in state funding during the budget hearing on Wednesday, Republican Assemblyman Eric Ari Brown asked him for more specifics, including how his administration calculated the $50 million direct economic impact it claims the arena and event center would generate over the first 5 years of operation. Brown also wanted to know if the projections included the cost of land acquisition and potential debt service, as well as operating expenses. Restaino told Brown the economic impact number was included in a feasibility study, which was conducted by the private firm Sports Facilities Advisory and partially funded by the state-run Empire State Development Corp. It's part of their formula, and it does include costs as well as what the expected revenue generation would be, Restaino said. Brown, referencing what he described as notes from some of his colleagues, also wanted to know if the city had any signed agreement or formal agreement with the Ontario Hockey League, a minor league hockey organization the mayor has suggested could serve as a tenant for a 6,000-seat arena included as part of the Centennial Park proposal. Restaino told Brown city officials have had talks with league representatives, including OHL Commissioner Brian Crawford, whom he described as no stranger to the Falls. Restaino did not say whether a formal agreement is in place with the league, only that Crawford and league officials have expressed interest in locating a franchise in the Falls. if the arena ever gets built. What they want to do is expand, and they see Niagara Falls as a beachhead in New York State to expand out because of the large portion of Ontario that would be included, Restaino said. That league is a bus-driven league in terms of the teams, so they see that as a convenient location to begin. Brown also asked if Restaino's administration had any contingency plan to satisfy debt service if projected estimates were not reached. We've started to explore with some of our partners how to address the whole debt service piece based upon our current finances and where we sit in our own economic picture, Restaino said. Finally, Brown asked whether there was any suggestion about withholding bed tax revenue from the local tourism and hotel agency if the agency did not provide support for the project. It was unclear because he did not reference the agency by name if he was referencing Niagara County's lead tourism advocacy group, Destination Niagara. Restaino met privately last May with members of the Niagara Falls Hotel and Motel Association and Destination Niagara CEO John Percy to discuss ways to help boost business amid declining visitor numbers. After the meeting, Restaino proposed cutting the bed tax fee, a fee applied to the bills of people staying in local hotels, by 50% in an effort to reduce costs for travelers. The proposal was never enacted. Percy's group, which relies on bed taxes for part of its operational funding, did later send out a letter of support that endorsed building the event center downtown. Restaino told Brown the two elements, the bed tax reduction discussion and support for Centennial Park, were completely separated. I know that some tried to conflate the two of them, but it was a different issue that we were having with regard to Airbnbs and a few other issues related to the bed tax, Restaino said. The question from Brown followed opening statements made by Restaino, in which he encouraged lawmakers to consider providing $200 million to the city to support Centennial Park's development. In his pitch, Restaino noted that the city is unable to collect taxes on numerous properties in the city, including those owned by the state and state authorities. He also noted that another 51 acres of downtown land, home to Seneca Niagara Casino and other Seneca Nation holdings, also operates tax-free. Restaino also reminded state lawmakers of other large-scale investments made in other areas, including support for the $2 billion Buffalo Bills Stadium in Orchard Park, a multi-billion-dollar Micron microchip production facility in central New York, and $400 million earmarked for the redevelopment in downtown Albany. As he has in the past, Restaino made the argument that the building an arena and event center would help the city extend its tourism season during the traditionally slower winter months and provide more revenue and jobs for the community. Assemblywoman Michelle Solgis, a Democrat who is also from Long Island, noted that Restaino's request would represent a big investment for the state and asked the mayor if he thought it had the potential to be transformative for Niagara Falls. There's no question that it would be, Restaino said. Short-term rental watching. Firm okayed for new contract. City officials say monitoring of data and enforcement will improve. Article by Rick Pfeiffer. The Niagara Falls City Council has okayed a 3-year extension of a contract with a company hired to monitor compliance with the city's short-term rental STR ordinance. The extension with Granicus, a Denver, Colorado consulting firm, was requested by Mayor Robert Orstano and the city's Department of Code Enforcement. It will run from February 17th to February 17th of 2029 at a yearly cost of $36,907.06. The vote to approve the extension was 4-1, with Council Member Vincent Cawley, Republican, opposed. The firm was hired in February of 2022 when the city adopted zoning code amendments to change the way short-term vacation and transient rental properties, STRs, are regulated, enforces those regulations and tax collection requirements. Granicus's original contract with the city was extended for just 1 year in 2025, after the firm came under heavy criticism for its oversight and enforcement of the zoning code requirements. At a city council committee of the whole meeting prior to its regular legislative session, lawmakers peppered acting city deputy corporation counsel Neil Redeline with questions about Granicus's performance over the past year. Redeline said complaints from STR operators have decreased, and issues involving the company's website were largely identified as user errors. Granicus's previous 3-year agreement and 1-year extension with the city required the company to provide enforcement services, including, among other things, providing the city with address identification, compliance, rental activity monitoring, tax collections, and a 24/7 web and phone hotline. Redline said he has used the Granicus platform and has been able to identify STR properties outside of proper zoning, the amount of usage properties are getting, what the nightly rates are, whether the rentals are condos, single-family homes, or apartments, and the residency of the STR owners. He also told the council that Granicus is one of the only companies that provides those kinds of services. I think it provides the information we need, and I think we need a process to monitor it, Redline said. I think the system does what it needs to do. He suggested that improved monitoring of the information that Granicus provides could lead to better enforcement of the zoning code regulations. City Administrator Anthony Rustino said interviews are underway to fill 2 vacant building safety inspector positions, and one of the new hires could be assigned to handle STR enforcement. The information is there. It's just a matter of having somebody look at it, Redeline told the council. Cawley moved to block consideration of the Granicus contract, but no other council member supported the move. I'm in opposition. We don't have someone taking that information to the administration, Cawley said. If we get that person, then we can get Granicus. Councilmember Bridget Miles, Democrat, said the city administrator's assurances that inspectors would be available to sift through the Granicus data satisfied her concerns about the company's performance. Member David Zajac, a Republican, said the briefing by Redline convinced him Granicus is doing what it's supposed to do. It's up to the city to enforce its regulations. The 2022 STR zoning code ordinance modified the way short-term vacation and transient rental properties are regulated in the falls. The ordinance imposed limits on where short-term rentals could operate, required new permits for current STRs, and added a yearly fee for operators along with yearly inspections. It also required STR operators to collect the same taxes that currently apply to hotels, motels, and bed and breakfast inns. Under the terms of the law, the yearly fee was designated to be used to hire a specialized STR compliance service provider or vendor to manage the new regulations and tax collection requirements. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Members of Tequila Sunrise living life in the fast lane. Eagles tribute band making their way to Lockport next month. Article by Heidi Trushell-Light. Desperados can come to their senses on March 7th when the Eagles tribute band Tequila Sunrise stirs up fans at the Keenan Center's Taylor Theater. The band's 7 p.m. show will feature several musicians from the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame. Kevin Leary, Arts and Culture Program Manager for the Keenan Center, said when looking at what the theater had offered, what we seemed to be missing were the cover bands. When it comes to covers you want to have in your venue, the Eagles jumped right to the top of the list. We think it's one that Lockportians are going to enjoy. Frontman Scott Solani said forming Tequila Sunrise was his wife's fault. We went to see the Eagles a few years ago, and it was packed to the rafters, Solani said. She looked around and said, I think you need to form an Eagles band. The tribute band thing in general has really taken off in the last 4 or 5 years. Some of those band members are no longer alive, and if they're still around, the tickets are really outrageous. The band's 6 members had played together for years before forming Tequila Sunrise. Dick Bowerly and Mike Runo play lead guitars. Gary Stinn plays keyboard and guitar. Steve Trucy plays bass with Cave Wilson on the drums. Solani said everyone sings with the exception of Wilson. The Buffalo-based band has played in Ohio and across western New York and the southern tier, and heads to Syracuse soon. We've had as many as 1,000 people at our shows, Solani said. We've had some great crowds. I'm just very fortunate to be surrounded by very talented players. They make me sound better. This is legendary music, and we're happy to honor it and glad people are enjoying it. Solani said one audience member told him, You took all of us back to a certain time in our lives. Fan favorites include Life in the Fast Lane, Take It Easy, One of These Nights, and Joe Walsh songs, he said. I'm singing the Glenn Frey songs and the Don Henley songs, Solani said, and we do some Joe Walsh from his solo career. We also do some songs from the extended Eagles family. There's a band called Poco, and we play a Jackson Browne series. The band doesn't try to address the part of each famous Eagles musician. The Eagles didn't really have a look, Solani said. They really weren't known for a big elaborate stage show. It's less about a visual presentation than the music. You've got to have the vocals. They're known for their beautiful harmonies. Articles from Thursday, February 12th of 2026. To the rescue. Newfane community rallies around Roger and Karen Taylor after house fire. Article by Heidi Trushell-Light. A family known for their generosity and helping hands is now the focus of the community's care after losing their home to a fire on Monday. Roger and Karen Taylor of 6124 East Avenue were helped to safety by the Miller Hose Company as a garage fire spread to their nearby house. The Niagara County Sheriff's Office stated in a release that the structures are likely to be a total loss. It's devastating, said Darcy Miller, the Taylor's daughter. My dad is taking it better than my mom. She gets very weepy. Who wants to start over again at 79 years old? My dad likes to make jokes and pretend it's funny. It's his coping mechanism. I grew up in that home. There's so many memories in that home. I just couldn't imagine losing everything I've had. Losing my childhood home and seeing it as it is right now is devastating as well. I just couldn't imagine what would have happened to her, Miller said tearfully of her mother, who needs assistance walking. Miller Hose, I am forever in debt to them. They have taken care of my family before. They're thinking that it was an electrical short. They heard a pop and something must have tripped, but we don't know that for sure. Miller said her parents and their dog are staying at a family member's home in the area. They were able to move their cars out of harm's way as the fire broke out, Miller said. People have been dropping money off to help, she said. Wherever we go, people are just there saying, whatever you need. The community has just opened their arms and are willing to help my parents as much as possible. Roger Taylor worked in the town of Newfane's streets department. Karen Taylor was a trusted babysitter who was the go-to person when someone needed a cake for a wedding, baby shower, or birthday, Miller said. Joe Cafora, owner of Cafora's Pizza and Pastaria in Newfane, is helping organize a benefit on April 25th at Alcott Fire Hall for the family he describes as always giving. He said many of the details are to be determined, but the event will include a pasta and meatball dinner and a basket raffle. Roger is a huge part of this community, Cafora said. He comes and plows our parking lot and fixes our restaurant equipment. He's an extremely handy guy around town. He had a pop machine outside his house for kids to buy pop. All the kids who were riding their bikes would go to his house. He was always outside working on something. Cafora said he contacted Taylor when his brother-in-law needed a riding lawnmower. Roger had 6 mowers that he had fixed, he said. Pick one out. He gave it to me for my brother-in-law to give as a housewarming gift. He's just super giving, and even now, it's like twisting his arm to let people give him anything. You'd go to his house and he'd be happy to fix your stuff for free. It's been overwhelming because everybody wants to help. It's a beautiful thing because it's brought the whole entire town together. They've got so much clothes they had me put out that they don't need more. Cafora's is letting us eat for free, Miller said. Gift cards are helpful. Right now, people keep asking, what do we need? We can't get into the house yet to go through things. I'm going to say there's probably absolutely nothing salvageable except what might be in the basement. The thoughts and prayers are what's needed. It's been amazing watching this community come around to my family. I don't live here, so I don't see it. I used to come up here and just name drop my dad, and people would say, I know who you are. To see it come back tenfold is just amazing. Cafora's encourages anyone who wants to volunteer at the benefit or donate items to call or message the restaurant at 716-778-8500. That's 716-778-8500 with their contact information. U.S. Navy's premier band to celebrate milestone year. Free concert coming up February 21st at Buffalo State College. The United States Navy Band will perform a free concert celebrating the nation's 250th anniversary at 7 p.m. February 21st at Buffalo State's Performing Arts Center, 1300 Elmwood Avenue in Buffalo. As part of its 2026 Northeast Tour celebrating the semi-quincentennial of the United States, the U.S. Navy Band will present a family-friendly concert. The program features a broad selection of musical works, from American classics to contemporary pieces. Selections include works by John Williams, Joseph Turin, Alberta Gianstrato, John Philip Sousa, and Aaron Copeland. As the premier musical organization of the U.S. Navy, the United States Navy Band is honored to celebrate the nation's historic milestone throughout the year by bringing the Navy where ships can't go, telling the Navy story, instilling pride and patriotism, and representing the professionalism of hundreds of thousands of sailors and Navy civilians serving around the world around the clock. Touring the nation and performing concerts means connecting with communities and telling the great stories of our sailors working around the globe to keep us safe and free, said Captain Robert Seth Coates, commanding officer of the U.S. Navy Band. The U.S. Navy Band is the flagship musical organization of the Navy and one of 11 Navy bands located around the world. There are 6 performing ensembles in the Navy Band: the Concert Band, the Ceremonial Band, Sea Chanters Chorus, Commodore's Jazz Ensemble, Country Current, Country Bluegrass Ensemble, and the Cruisers Popular Music Group. Ensembles from the Navy Band tour nationally for 12 to 15 weeks each year. Sailors in the Navy Band are full-time professional musicians. Almost all of the sailors in the Navy Band have undergraduate degrees in music, and most have graduate degrees. For more information, visit www.navyband.mil/events/tours/concert-band-2026. Old Fort Niagara kicks off big year with Winter Warriors, special event focused on winter survival during American Revolution. Old Fort Niagara will usher in America's 250th year with Winter Warriors, a special event focused on how people survived winter on the New York frontier during the American Revolution. On Saturday and Sunday, visitors to the fort will be able to try out snowshoes, start a fire with flint and steel, build a wilderness shelter, and write a letter home with a quill pen. Other living history demonstrations include laundry and winter hygiene, winter clothing, the thermal science of fabric, carpentry, officers' amusements, native diplomacy, frontier foodways, fishing on the Great Lakes, and musket firing. Interpretive talks will shed light on the American Revolution on the northern frontier. North Fort Niagara was held by the British throughout the Revolution, serving as British headquarters on the Great Lakes, as well as a refuge for Loyalists and Native American supporters. The fort also served as a base of operation for raids against the New York and Pennsylvania frontiers. In February of 1776, the fort was cut off from communication and supply by American forces besieging Quebec. For more information about Winter Warriors, visit www.oldfortniagara.org or call 716-745-7611. That's 716-745-7611. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from current issues of the Niagara Gazette. We read from the Niagara Gazette every Saturday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been Bruce. Thank you for listening, and as always, make it a great day.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Dunkirk Observer. Following that at 1 o'clock, we have a reading of some of our Northtown Bee papers, including Amherst, Clarence, Cheektowaga, Lancaster, and Depew. And then at 2 o'clock, we have the Southtown Bees, which includes Orchard Park, the Hamburg Sun, the East Aurora, and West Seneca papers. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio Reading broadcasts daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to people who are blind or have a print disability and are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. From broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road, Radio Reading continues our almost 40-year tradition of award-winning service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability